Today's video is very close to my heart. I'm often asked the question, what is the license that a property sourcing agent needs to have? What is the law around property sourcing? And just the legalities that I often share during my property sourcing classes, right? So as of the 1st of February, 2022, the Property Practitioners Act was promulgated, meaning it was put into effect. It has been there for a hot minute. However, it has only now been put into effect as of the 1st of February 2022. So I have the beautiful Silna Stain that is going to come through and share with us what is the Property Practitioners Act? How does it affect property sourcing agents? The things that are important for us property sourcing agents that we need to keep in mind with the Property Practitioners Act, and the infamous question, like I just shared, about the license, the FFC certificate. How do we go about obtaining that? What does it actually mean to us? Is it a license? Is it a certificate? What does it mean to us in our world? So welcome, Silna. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate your time. So today we're going to get into the topic of the Property Practitioners Act and property sourcing. Two subjects that feel like, what do they have in common with each other? So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I always have so much fun having a conversation with you. So thank you for asking me to break the news on this. Well, it's not really a new piece of legislation, but I mean, now that it's effective, I think everybody's like, whoa, we knew it was coming, but here it is now. How does it affect my life? So thank you so much for choosing me to be that person.
Awesome stuff. No, we appreciate that. So before we actually get started in how property sourcing and Property Practitioners Act relate to each other, what I'd love you to do is just give us a very quick definition. What is the Property Practitioners Act?
That's amazing, Gina. I'm always impressed with the faith you have in me, because if you look at it if you combine the act and the regulations, it's a pretty hefty printed out bundle of documentation. So to bring that into a nutshell is almost like trying to, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, sort of a very big piece of thing. But let's see if I can shrink the kids for us. Okay, so the Property Practitioners Act, I think the best quick way of describing it is the legislator realized that since the promulgation of the Estate Agency Affairs Act, that act focused only on the traditional estate agent. Now, here's a little fun fact about the Estate Agency Affairs Act, as well as its rules. It basically only related to sales agents. So even real estate agents, and now I'm using the word real estate agent in the context of traditional, even your rental agent were excluded from the ambit. Not excluded, but it wasn't catered for really in terms of the Estate Agency Affairs Act. And even more so, managing agents in the context of levies and bodies corporate, even they weren't really catered for under the Estate Agency Affairs Act. So the history of the Property Practitioners Act is that the Estate Agency Affairs Act had a few pretty big holes in it that had to cater for different kinds of estate agents. And while they were busy with that, they thought, okay, let's broaden the scope, which I am extremely optimistic about and excited about. So from that was the history. What it is now is this is a piece of legislation that deals with every single property practitioner, and a property practitioner in this act, Gina, is actually defined over 2 pages. So it's a very long definition on what a property practitioner is. But you asked me to Silna it up, so here is the Silna version. A property practitioner is a person that is acting, either a natural person or a juristic entity. So even if you are trading in a company or a closed corporation, even that juristic entity is a property practitioner when you are acting or transacting with property on behalf of another person. Okay, so this is wide. It's really wide. It's not just your traditional estate agent. It is also your traditional sales agent, your traditional rental agent, your traditional managing agent in the context of a body corporate, and then also anybody else that is transacting with regards to property on behalf of another person. So this is as wide as it is. And basically what the Act says is every such property practitioner, so whenever you are transacting around property on behalf of another person, or doing calculations for that matter on behalf of another person, must have a Fidelity Fund certificate. Why on earth is that a requirement? This is to protect the consumer. There is, again, a very strong drive towards consumer protection, as it should be, because, I mean, we've heard lovely stories about wholesaling and sourcing and those kind of things that worked out amazingly. But sadly, on the litigation side of things, I have seen the opposite, even more so. And unfortunately, I sit with a few judgments just from my firm against property practitioners that prior to the Property Practitioners Act being promulgated and became effective, did not have Fidelity Fund certificates, and accordingly, my clients sit with judgments that really can't be collected, when now every property practitioner must have a Fidelity Fund certificate, meaning there is a Fidelity Fund protecting the consumer. So in a situation where a property practitioner accidentally didn't have his pencil as sharp as he should have been, or there was a bit of a mishap there, at least the consumer and the client does have the protection of the Fidelity Fund. And also the Property Practitioners Act now brings in training requirements for every property practitioner. So you can't just be Joe Soap running in from the side and be like, you know, I feel like I almost said a cryptocurrency trader exclusively without any training, but say that exists. So I'm choosing between cryptocurrency trading without any training, or property investment without any training. At least now on the property side of the things, we do have the protection of the Property Practitioners Act requiring a minimum level of training, regulating this part of the industry and ensuring protection for your consumer. That wasn't a nutshell. That was like a 5-minute nutshell. That's a pretty big nut. But you didn't say what kind of nut. Okay, I gave you a coconut version.
I love the coconut version, Silna. And I'll tell you why. I mean, you've just explained to us. Just the explanation on who a property practitioner is over 2 pages. So I think that was pretty good. And, you know, for me, what it also does, it feeds into this whole process, right? So before I go into my next question, let me give our viewers just a bit of a picture. You know, when I got started in property sourcing back in 2016, it literally was a new piece of training that was brought into the country. There were many people that claimed to have been doing sourcing for years, okay? Very few and far in between. Very few of them could give me a proper explanation. And I found myself really just like, come on, guys, just two sentences explaining what it is that you do can't be that difficult. And yet I found that many people that claim to be property sourcing agents also themselves were like iffy about the law, and they were not quite sure. And again, you know, nothing against them. When we learn something new and we believe it can be possible, it's always good to, I believe, find out more about it. Yeah. And even TJ and I got started, we heard no money down strategy. And I remember saying this to Leroy Slava, who was the guy that was at the property webinar we attended. I said, my guy, I'm coming to this training, and if I cannot find this thing that you're talking about that we can get involved in property with no money down, I'm coming for you. And Leroy still laughs about it to today. You know, we poke fun about that, because in my mind, I could not relate to what is this no money down strategy, only to find creative finance is such a broad term to encapsulate this no money down strategy. And one of the strategies, this is in property sourcing. So with my long explanation, I also found that during that time, there was no sort of law as such governing it, right? We heard of this Property Practitioners Act brewing. So in my mind, it was so far distant. It wasn't even in the like the lower parts of my medulla oblongata. It was just something so far-fetched,
Yeah.
And within the space of us learning about property sourcing, we learned amongst others that were having money, that were able to actually buy these properties. So we really just transacted with people going through the same education, which is why today I really wanted us to marry, why does the Property Practitioners Act affect property sourcing agents today? And I really love that my viewers are going to be on the right side of the law. I'm going to put in the description below the link through to the Property Practitioners Act so that everybody can actually get a chance to read through it, really understand for themselves what that is. Now, you mentioned something else. You mentioned a Fidelity Fund certificate. This is now to answer another viewer that asked me, Jen, what license does a property sourcing agent need? This is particularly, I think it was NW that asked me this question. So I want to find out from you about the Fidelity Fund certificate. What is this license that we need? You touched on it. Is there anything more that you can share about it?
Yes, most definitely. So the Fidelity Fund certificate, I very often hear people refer to a license, and it's actually exactly the same as what we have for attorneys. So we as attorneys, because we have a trust account with other people's money in it, remember our trust accounts aren't our money, it is our clients' money that you have a fiduciary duty towards that money, and you need to guard it with your life. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people who has access to other people's money doesn't guard it with their life, but use it for their own lifestyle. See, that's very different. And I think that's where confusion comes in sometimes. Whenever you have to transact or use or protect somebody else's assets or money, a Fidelity Fund certificate is a certificate to say you are a legal practitioner, or in this particular case, a property practitioner who has complied with the provisions of this legislation with this regulatory authority. So in the context, again, of attorneys, we have the Legal Practice Council, but in the context of property practitioners, we have the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. Now, if you can't get your tongue around that very quickly, don't stress. Everybody's just referring to it as the PPRA. That is obviously the replacing body of the EAAB, the Estate Agency Affairs Board. So the PPRA is the regulatory authority that must oversee this whole property practitioner situation, and must oversee property practitioners, and must ensure that they are registered with the regulatory authority. And once they are, and once they have fulfilled all the legislative requirements to be a property practitioner, the authority says lekker, and they issue your Fidelity Fund certificate. Your Fidelity Fund certificate isn't a license in the sense of your driver's license that says you are allowed to drive a car. This is a document that says there is a regulatory authority backing what you are doing, and should you not fulfill your professional obligations, you are bound by this regulatory authority, and you will be subjected to their disciplinary proceedings and actions. And should something go super south and there is a financial loss for one of your clients, they can claim that loss from the Fidelity Fund. But here's an important thing, guys. I find with legal practitioners, and the same, unfortunately, with estate agents and now property practitioners, the fact that you have a Fidelity Fund certificate, this doesn't mean that it is similar to something like professional indemnity insurance. Remember, professional indemnity insurance is something where if you make a mistake, either in error or purposefully, but negligently purposefully, not like blatantly going in there to try and rob somebody. If you made a mistake, say for instance, again in the context of an estate agent, you have released the full deposit in a rental property to the tenant without doing a proper exit inspection. And now you realize, well, genade, there's actually a lot of broken items and stuff in the premises, and the tenant just absconds and disappears, gone. The owner is suffering losses because of your actions. Fidelity Funds isn't going to pay for that. You will have to pay for that as the estate agent or the property practitioner, because you cannot just claim from the Fidelity Fund. The only time you can claim from a Fidelity Fund, be it the property practitioners or the legal practice or whoever, Fidelity Fund, you need to claim that amount and you need to execute in full against the practitioner before you can claim from the Fidelity Fund. What this means is, if I as an attorney or you as a property practitioner holding a Fidelity Fund certificate, messed up, stole money, whatever the situation might be, they will have to execute against you in full, meaning sell all your immovable property, sell all your movable property. First, sequestrate you in your personal capacity, liquidate if you were in a juristic entity, and only then can you approach the Fidelity Fund and say, okay, there's no more money here, can you please help me? So I know sometimes I just feel like that bad teacher that's like, julle moet mooi kyk. The reason why I'm saying it like this is very often the Fidelity Fund certificate, if he is seen as a license to trade, which it is in a way, but if it is seen as this is my insurance, if I make a mistake, at least I have the Fidelity Fund to fall back on. Don't be fooled by that, because that is not the intention of the Fidelity Fund. It is an emergency safety net for the user at the end. So that was a very long answer on that driver's license, but that is the long and the short of the Fidelity Fund certificate.
I believe it's really important, especially if you're going to be making a bit of a career of property sourcing. Like I shared, we started in 2016. There was this umbrella of creative finance, and under this umbrella, there was your lease agreements, your joint ventures, angel investors, sourcing agents, and the works, right? And when we found a deal, the deal kind of, my husband was like, this deal, babe, it's too good just to sell it, sell the concept of it, because you're not selling the house as a property sourcing agent. You're selling the concept to a property investor that doesn't have time, right? You are the one that is time rich. The property investor may be time strapped. So they use your services to go and find a property, do your due diligence, run your numbers, do your market comparables, put all that information of your findings into a proposal, and you bring it through to them, right? And TJ was like, this one, babe, requires a joint venture. There's just too much money in here. So, in all of navigating this no money down situation, we found that property sourcing after that first joint venture was something that we got into a whole lot more. And eventually, one of the things I thought was quite interesting is that over time, when I was at the SAPIN events, the property investing network events, I would go to the front. I was a subscription member. I would go to the front and I would say, if you are a passive income investor and you are looking for 15% return of investment in Johannesburg North, come and talk to me during the break there at the green door. I was kind of specific about where you can find me. So where I found investors, I found people that were wanting to do what I did. And I often did that within the space of the Property Investors Network. And over time, when I actually felt like I want to expand a little bit more, because I would find situations where if there's an investor that got my deal, right, then I want this to be a flip opportunity. In my mind, I thought, if I was just the property practitioner or the real estate agent in this deal, I could have now been making more money selling this deal because I would have probably sold the before and the after, right?
Yes.
Because I would have gone to my before database that saw this as a rundown situation, right? And this is when my mind in 2020 clicked. Maybe I should take it to the next level. And I remember joining Keller Williams. I'm very much a techie. They very much like that independence of real estate agents or property practitioners, where you can actually promote online and do quite a few things. But what I loved was that I'm going to get my FFC because I joined this particular agency. I liked the ethos and all the stuff that came with them. And that's how I acquired my FFC at the beginning of 2020. Thanks to COVID, that kind of shut down that idea very, very fast because it was very short-lived, but I still was able to pay for it for that whole entire year, being under the Keller Williams umbrella. So I want to say to those that are interested in getting your FFC, according to the Property Practitioners Act, it didn't change on how to get your FFC. How I did it in the beginning of 2020 is I found a number of different places, but I gravitated towards Keller Williams because they kind of ticked off a number of boxes that I was looking at. I just want to find out from you what you know about property sourcing and what you know about the Property Practitioners Act, and anybody for that matter that wants to get into property from an investment strategy, like I've mentioned, joint ventures, lease agreements, and the likes. What else do you believe is important for somebody like me starting out in property investment, and I need to know about the Property Practitioners Act?
Okay, let's see how quickly I can do this. Another coconut. Okay, so yes, a very important thing. This act came into effect on the 1st of February, 2022. So it's already in effect. There's no more time to try and see if it's going to fly. It's flying. It is like in the sky and it is running. And it is already effective. Very important. If you do have a Fidelity Fund certificate issued by the EAAB, that certificate is valid for the entire 2022. You only need to register as a property practitioner with the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority, PPRA, by the 31st of October, 2022. Okay, but you need to do it by now. Very important. To register, there's a few requirements. You need to provide a tax clearance certificate. So this is important for me to say now because it's the 8th of February today. If you have your ducks in a row and everything in order by the 31st of October 2022, this gives you time to do that. Now, very important on your tax clearance certificate, guys, please keep in mind, if you have any unpaid tax, even if you have an agreement with SARS, you will not receive a tax clearance certificate. And without that, you won't be able to register. So get your tax affairs in order in the next few months so you can register by the 31st of October 2022. Also, you need a BE certificate in a company or as a practitioner, sole practitioner. You need a BE certificate. There is no BE requirement yet in this regard. So whether you're non-compliant or on affidavit level 1, I am jealous, BE company, get your BE certificates and your tax clearance certificates in order. A very unfortunate situation is currently under the Act, which is yet to be seen what's happening. A few disqualifications, for instance, if you are not a South African citizen, or if you are not a South African resident with full residency, you won't be able to register as a property practitioner. Now, I'm still curious to see if that is actually going to sit. And if that's going to be the position, but be that as it may, unfortunately, that is where we are now. And once you register with the property practitioners, with the PPRA, they will give you all the guidelines of what now next. So my suggestion is get to the PPRA as soon as possible. Understand what their requirements are. Download the copy of the act that, which Gina is providing, as well as the regulations. Read through it. You will see it's published in both English and Tivenda. But my Venda is not where my English is, so I don't know about you, but I just must stuck to the English version. And read through it, get comfortable, know what's happening, and don't delay your registration with the PPRA until like the 10th of October, and then like, what's in order? I need to register by the 31st. Get your ducks in a row now, because there is a lot of documentation. You will have to register under a principal property practitioner. To be a candidate property practitioner, you will have to go through all the training provided by the PPRA. Unfortunately, it's obviously paid courses that you will have to do. At this stage, it's still to be seen exactly how and what's going to happen around the PDEs and the what's the word I'm looking for? The PDEs and the PDF4, that's what I'm looking for. That one. And you still gonna have, but it's because I said PDE first, and then I'm like, what's the other one? PDF. You still need to do those examinations, but you will have to register as a candidate property practitioner. The Act did away with something the Estate Agency Affairs Act had, that I think every single candidate estate agent hated, and that's the logbook system. So this is different, and that's one of the few differences between the pieces of legislation that's quite pleasant for most people, doing away with the logbook system. But my suggestion is get your ducks in a row, get your tax clearance certificate, your BEE certificate, get all of those things in order, and get your things going so you can register with the PPRA as soon as possible. Because the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to get your Fidelity Fund certificate, and the sooner you can actually collect your commission. Because the problem is, Gina, without that FFC, to trade as a property practitioner without that doesn't only mean you cannot receive your commission, it also means you will be fined heavily. So under the Estate Agency Affairs Act, it was only you can't receive your commission without a Fidelity Fund certificate. Now this act carries a very heavy sanction. So to try and see if you can maybe slip between the lines, yellow, nobody looks good in orange, and nobody wants to pay a massive fee, because it does carry a potential prison risk, as well as a heavy financial implication. I always have to say scary things. I'm so sorry, Gina.
And this is why I love speaking to you, because you give us the real life situation. Many people often gravitate to the easy way of how property sourcing sounds. It's a simple concept, but to understand the background of the simple concept takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So thank you so much, Solna. Really appreciate your time. I really appreciate the fact that you're able to come to the table and share this with us. And if there's a closing words you've got, go for it.
Closing words, get your tax affairs in order.
Awesome. Wasn't that interesting? I know it was a mouthful. Solna, what I love about the way she explains things, she goes into great detail. Some people will feel like, oh, that's a lot of detail. But I want to say to you, when you are wanting to stay on the right side of the law, you need to understand the full extent of the law. So I trust those subscribers, those viewers that have asked me the question about the license, and those future property sourcing agents, I need you to always pay attention to the Property Practitioners Act, and as it evolves over time. Yes, it's been promulgated, meaning it's been put into effect, but it doesn't mean that it won't change. So if you want to keep on the right side, like I shared with you during the interview, down in the description below is a link through to the Property Practitioners Act. Read it, give it a squiz, make sure that you understand where you stand as a property sourcing agent. I wonder, will I see you in one of the classrooms that I'm going to have as I am retiring? So I've got 2 in-person classrooms and 1 online classroom. Thereafter, it will be then on my website for sale, so that at least you and any future property sourcing agent, wholesaler, can get the hardcore facts about what it is to do property sourcing, how to go through the process of property sourcing, and really to stick on the legal side and enjoy life as a property sourcing agent.